welcome back to another very special episode of the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my friend, smoker, and wildest game,
Alex Dandino, yes.
That's right, guys. Today we are here to finish up the second half of our amazing double feature selected over at Patreon by our friend Jason Keene. So if you guys have not yet downloaded the first half of this double feature, Ricochet, that's on your feeds now. So go enjoy that and then come do Surviving the Game. Honestly, you can do them in whichever order. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jason, again for the awesome selections. Before we continue down the path of this double feature, a wild, rocky wilderness path, a little business, people. It's official. Your friends here at the Film Alchemist, we're on Patreon. Patreon.com/Film Alchemist Pod. Guys, it's the best way to help the show. It's the best way to help the show be exactly what you want, like Jason selecting today's double features. So if you go on over to Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you can get in, join the community, see what we're working on, meet our awesome friends over there. And as you increase up the official Highlander tier ranking system, you get to specifically select the movies that you want us to talk about on a Patreon exclusive feed. You also get a vote on movies, extra movies, so a lot of input into the kind of movies that we're discussing on the show, which has been really fun. We got a lot of good friends. It's a really good community we're working on. For those of you who thank us or support us, we thank you. Thank you, not thank you for your hard-earned time and dollars. We know dollars are not easy to come by, so we're working hard to earn them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you who are about to join us, thank you as well. Make sure you go to YouTube. Subscribe to the channel Film Alchemist. You can see, just these really good representations of our beautiful faces. Faces you would never want to take down in a hunt.
Look at my face.
Ever. Yeah, it's a fight. It's a fight. No, that's probably not helping. But anyways, you guys get it. Go over Film Alchemist, YouTube, subscribe. Make sure you email us, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all the socials you're on. We're easy to get a hold of. We love to hear from you guys. Make sure, guys, this is important. Something you can do that's very fast, easy, free, that helps us out more than you'd think. Make sure you're leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you find the show. You can even do the 5 stars now on Spotify. So wherever you listen, we appreciate it. Let them know you enjoy spending time with us. Helps us algorithmically trick some people into our mountain, man. Now they're on our mountain. You know what we're doing? We're hunting a good time. That's how we do it. Right, man. Just labored analogies aside. Tonight we finish our double dose of tea. The pod has some Oz tea. We're Surviving the Game. Perhaps Ice-T's most famous leading man role.
Is it really?
I don't know. What would be the other competitors?
SVU?
Way more famous of a project, but he is not what the show rotates around, right?
I feel like
I might
the
say
two things that Ice-T's most known for is SVU and telling people he's going to kill cops. Like those
and Coco. And Coco number 3.
Sorry, Coco.
Right.
You're right.
But,
sorry, Coco.
So Surviving the Game is a classic rich people who want to hunt humans, right? What's the most dangerous game? Humans. Because we fight back. Many films about man hunting other men. It's something that we seemingly just can't get enough of in our life. This idea, I think the world lends itself to this. We take advantage of each other. We treat each other like cattle in so many ways. Why not take it up a notch? It's visually fun and leads to a lot of drama. What is strange about this one, right? This film, under the watchful eye of Ernest Dickerson. I actually just watched Eve's Bayou for the first time. Fucking amazing flick that I'm pretty sure he directed. Yeah. So go watch that one too. We might have to talk about that someday. But under the watchful eye of Ernest Dickerson, right? Ice-T delivers a pretty fucking compelling performance, right? There's a notable scene where it's like, I don't think he's going to get us there. Just lift the camera up to look at the top of his head. But other than that, a really compelling film in a time when movies were looking for anyone who could be the leading man of this kind of action thrillery movie. I think of the not top tier guys, right? Your Jean-Claude's, your Seagulls, your Chuck Norris's, right? Whatever those guys were beneath like the Stallones and Arnolds. They had a lot of guys trying to do these movies. This is a pretty solid one. And then you just throw in this unreal cast of hunters. And you just have a movie that is so fucking bizarre for so many reasons. But what this movie is above anything else is just wildly fucking entertaining. Alex, opening thoughts on Surviving the Game.
I mean, yeah, it's such a fascinating thing to see. Like this came out in 94. Like it's such a fascinating thing to see, like the convalescence of, and we talked about it on the show, this like alchemy of this incredible cast. Like this, for one, like this cast exists in a vacuum of like awesome 90s-ness. Like, and a lot of it's not to say that like I don't like watching these guys now, because when they're older, they're great too. Some of them have passed, unfortunately, sadly, Rutger Hauer notably. But it is like this amazing thing. It's like the music was by Stuart Copeland of The Police.
The Police. I thought that when we were getting like the slow jazz riff at the start of homelessness and human and dog murder.
The music in this, the music at the top of this, I was like, what is the mood I'm supposed to be feeling here? Because like
when
this,
you hear
like when Ice-T. Like when Ice-T is taking a bath for like what I'm assuming is the first time in months, and it's just like this real sexed up music. I'm like, is a woman about to come in, or what's going on? Like
they're just
my
like,
feelings are very uncomfortable.
Stuart Copeland's like, how do I finally climb out of the shadow of Sting? By doing too much. And he's like, oh my God, is that a Dalton Trumbo bath?
But the movie overall, for being, again, this is like, man, I feel like this is probably like the 10th version of The Most Dangerous Game, which is
probably like the 10th version of 1994.
Yeah.
Like there's so many of these movies.
I mean, like it's like a really, again, the first story I think is from the short is from 1924. The short story that the movie is based on. But that story's been around, since 1924. So like it's been made and made and made and made. It was always interesting. This to me has it's that base level. If you like The Most Dangerous Game, you'll like this movie. Let's add like some, for 1994, top tier character actors, like top of their game character actors, not just like Rutger Hauer, but like Busey, John McGinley, F. Murray Abraham. Like you have guys who are in here who you like actually, okay. And then the guy who plays, I could not place it and I had to look it up online. The guy who plays Wolf Jr., F. Murray Abraham's son. It's like, that guy is strikingly familiar, and his weird little scrunch face, I know it from somewhere. He is the copycat killer in Copycat with Sigourney Weaver. Like that is how I remember him.
That old chestnut.
I absolutely love Copycat. Maybe sometime we'll get it. Have we done that one already? We'll get to it if we haven't.
No, we should someday.
But so you have that, you have these character actors, and then you have Ice-T, who's sort of like Ice-T's leading the charge. So it's just this, just a faint hint of racism as all these white guys chase this black man through the wilderness. You're like, awkward, but let's just go with it here. It's just
let's put it this way. Surviving the Game has a scent that is kind of like, many days old BO, and you're like, what'll fix it? A whole can of Axe body spray. So it's strong fucking smells, right? This is not a subtle like potpourri in the background. These are strong fucking, but this is what I thought was so captivating, right? Is Ice-T is clearly not a traditional actor, right? Not probably a trained actor or whatever. I think you could say he's gone on to a wonderful acting career.
Yeah, definitely.
And he makes most things better when he's in them, right? Because what Ice-T has is a natural persona and confidence as a performer, right? So I think this movie does a wonderful job of utilizing what he does, right? Because the reason you have Ice-T in this film is for name recognition, star power, right? And what they did was not, hey, you've got to really sell I was just a mechanic and I kept putting it off and I burned my wife and kids down. Like, we're not going for Oscars here, right?
Right.
You just deliver that however you can get there. And then you have this amazing array of character actors that can then overdo their roles, by proxy to what he's doing. And somehow it maximizes the best of what they do. Because Ice-T, they're like, can you just do a really sharp version of Ice-T, the performer? And he's like, got it. And it fucking works, man. It's the best. It pulls out the best of all of them by not asking anyone to overdo it, except for sure Gary Busey and Cowboy.
I think that's like a really important thing too. Is like no one's being asked to overdo anything. They're literally just asking to use all their powers as actors. And like for Gary Busey, that is this like very over the top vibe. Like what's going to happen, and you're waiting for that Buseyness.
We have to stop here.
That's the flavor.
I think there's something about Gary Busey, right? He has become this kind of pop culture kind of, I don't know what it's called, a scratching post, right? You just kind of come up and scratch, and you're like, ew, weird, and you run away. He's become somewhat of a laughing stock as he's gotten older, right? We see him, we laugh at him, like, that guy's fucking crazy. Every time he opens his mouth, you're like, what the fuck is he saying?
Yeah.
I was rewatching this movie, and I think we often forget how awesome of an actor Gary Busey really was.
Constantly.
That scene, so when he talks about how he got his scar, right? And he's like, I call it my birthmark. And he talks about his bulldog that he loved and cherished and groomed and threw cherry bombs at to make him a guard dog. And then his dad's like, fucking fight this dog. I would love to hear your thoughts, but I was watching that scene, and I was like, this would be awesome for any movie. Like, Gary Busey so fucking crushes that moment. And to me, it's kind of the linchpin between the two halves of the film where you go, oh my God, this is really fucking good. Yeah. Like, how is that in this movie?
That's the turn of the screw. Like, that's the top. Yeah. That's like, we're at the very apex of the, like, we're about to jump into what's actually about to happen. And it's, again, it's Gary Busey. He's, like, perfectly positioned to be that kind of weird. Did you know that entire monologue was improvised?
There was a part of me, right, that's like,
whole thing.
Do I partially believe that Gary Busey killed his childhood dog with his bare hands? Like, that would track.
Whole thing was improvised. Because I remember I texted you. I texted you after I watched this, actually. And I was just like, there's like no way anyone watching this movie isn't like, Gary Busey's definitely done that. Like, he's definitely hunted people.
You think they saved on the budget and they actually just invited him to hunt a human? And he's like, fuck yeah, I'll be there.
I have a feeling that most of that was Gary Busey's actual home. See, now we're diving into this like Gary Busey's crazy thing, but truly, we do forget. Like,
and also, I'm not gonna feel bad for that because Gary Busey went off the rails.
He's a psychopath, like,
and not necessarily in like we feel bad and he needs help way, just like that guy's out there way.
There's a level of he's such a fascinating person because honestly, he's a great he was a great actor for like there was a chunk of time like I'll tell you what, my first movie I ever saw him in was like Rookie of the Year when he was Chet Stedman. That was the first time I watched The Rocket. First time I saw him in a movie, I was like, oh shit.
This is how far Gary Busey has fallen, right? Is that there was once a time when a major family movie said, who could we imagine that children and their moms would want to come into their house to complete their happy family? Gary fucking Busey.
He had... Well, and like, actually, I was trying to like do I don't know when it happened because I know he was in a really horrible motorcycle accident that like left the reason his face looks the way it does now, because his face kind of looks disjointed essentially.
Yeah.
He had a really horrible accident where actually it messed his face up, and I was trying to figure out I was like, did it happen in 94? Is that scar there? Not like, are they trying to explain why he has a scar? It's like sort of like Mark Hamill after his accident, like when they started filming Empire, they had to explain certain scars on his face. It's like, is that the same? Like, are we just trying to explain something away? Like,
it seems like a pretty minor scar, but yeah,
it didn't matter.
A fucking motorcycle accident.
Gary Busey's monologue is like, yeah, I question. I'm like, there's no way this didn't happen. He for sure did this. He definitely wrestled a dog into the mud and broke its neck.
Do we think Gary Busey's probably like a world-class improviser? Is he just like, All right, I've got a tale for you. Does that feel like if you were out like doing shots with Gary Busey at 3 a.m.? He's like, hey man, you ever killed your own dog? And I'm like, what?
And
he's
like
like,
this too.
2 more. I got to tell a tale.
This beat is like the shade of. This beat also is the shade of Busey that we get in later years, like the kind of crazy, like aura sensing, like this caricature that he's become. But he's still really, really good in this movie. Like, and also like the worst psychiatrist
is like. If anyone gave that monologue in any movie, you're like, well, I'm working for like the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Like that's how fucking good that monologue is.
Ice-T also asks the exact question all the rest of us are asking as we're listening to this. Is like, have you told anybody else about this story that like you supervise as a psychiatrist?
Yeah.
I really hope not.
This guy who desperately seems to be throwing out cries for help constantly is a therapist. This is it.
You know what else
here's
too?
the thing, though, right? You know what is really funny about this, though? Because what I think is extra good about this scene and the way because once you see Rutger Hauer and Gary Busey, right? A lot of the cast here, yeah, you're like, all right, this is like a who's list of character actor bad guys, right?
Yeah.
I had forgotten the movie began with that juxtaposition of guy running through the fucking woods being hunted. Him trying to scavenge for food, right?
Yep.
He gets a little morsel of food, but he saves some to share with his beloved dog, Mingo.
Mm-hmm.
And then his dog gets hit. A cabbie punches him, right, for damaging his cab. And a crossbow bolt explodes out of a guy's body. Surviving the game. Title card is like, yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
What I think is so fascinating about this movie is there is no guile in this whole film. There is not one fucking second of this film where we don't know that it's a foregone conclusion. And you know how it works the best is when the guy who's working at the 75th Street mission, we've seen him watching Ice-T for like 4 scenes, right? Is he's having this wonderful back and forth with Hank or whatever. We know that he's been watching Ice-T, and when he says, here's a job to get you out, this is how it works, right? It's because we know it's already bad. When he offers them a hand up, we're like, this motherfucker is poaching homeless guys. How does it work for you when there's not one bit of dramatic tension in any frame of this movie?
It's really funny you say that because I actually wrote in my notes, I was like, we already know how this is going to go. Like, the question I asked in my notes, like, why... Like, even if you're an unsuspecting audience member, like you and I are savvy enough, we've watched enough of these where we probably could have figured out just from the name and poster alone what's surviving the game.
It's not called Nearly Survived the Game. Right.
So, like, for me, I wrote in my notes, like, why is it that we know what this movie is about immediately when it starts? Like, there's no hidden agenda with what the movie is. Mm-mm. I spent a lot of time after I finished watching it trying to figure out. I was like, why does it matter that I already know at the top? Like, does that here? This is what I came up with, and honestly, I don't even think it's a satisfying answer, but this is the best I can come up with. Is it because the story is so like the story is now like a very timeless trope, like people hunting people. We get it, like it's a thing. Most dangerous game, we already know, so on and so forth. Is it because of that? Because we know that instead of making it about that, the subversion of expectations then is about more, we're actually doing a character study on these guys. Like, does it become less about the actual plot itself and more about, can you actually get invested in these people? Like, you're obviously going to be invested in Mason because he's the guy who's being hunted, but like, they're just begging you the entire movie to ask more questions about these guys. And particularly, and more importantly, the whole point of spending time with these guys before the next morning is to actually be intrigued and interested, because all these guys have their own little affectations. Like John McGinley's character is this oil tycoon who like almost fucking ends the whole hunting thing there by beating the shit out of Ice-T when he says like, I killed my wife and kids.
Yeah,
like,
this guy is he is an oil derrick ready to burst.
Yeah, that guy
is moment.
Yeah. This Daniel Plainview type is very, very
And this is the thing, right? I can imagine there's some audience members listening and they're like, oh, no fucking shit. You guys think you're clever. You knew what was going to happen in surviving the game. I get it. It is a classic. What I'm saying is I think this is an Ernest Dickerson thing where you got to give him some credit. Of course, we all know Ice-T is going to survive the game. What I'm saying is, why would they not hide a little bit more at the start, right? Most movies would hide the fact that the guy from the mission was a bad guy. They wouldn't cast Rutger Hauer because immediately as soon as you see him and he's got a fucking like statue of fire coming out of a lady's tits behind him, you're like, that guy's not trustworthy.
He's got a P-tail and
it's 1994. Why didn't they cast Billy Crystal?
He's got a P-tail and a goatee. Clearly there's something. No, I agree.
Well, because then once Billy Crystal's like, wake the fuck up, you're like, oh my God, that was a turn.
That's the disarming thing. Like, that's what I'm trying to say, though, is like, I don't really think it's snooty or uppity of us as people who do a podcast like this to, like, it's not about
no more than just everything else, but yeah.
It's not about the title. Like, to me, surviving the game is like, whatever. That's a title of a movie. Like, there's plenty of misleading titles in the entire, like, I think what Ernest Dickerson is really doing is saying, you guys already know what's about to happen. There's nothing that I'm going to do that's going to surprise you. So what I'm going to instead do is try to get you guys to give a shit about these guys before this hunt starts, so that once the hunt starts, you actually are invested, not just in Ice-T's survival, but to find out which of these guys is going to crack. Because, like, you know, like William McNamara, who is Wolf Jr., F. Murray Abraham's son, obviously doesn't have the stomach for it from the jump. Like, for me, McGinley and Busey are the ones where I'm like, what are those two going to do to either get iced or is one of them going to crack at some point? Like, because, like, Busey's just too weird at the top. Like, clearly as a psychiatrist, he hasn't psychiatried people in quite some time. So something else is going on. Like, and you're like, something's weird with that guy. Something's weird with the guy who's like a loose cannon, can't take it. Like, there's a lot to touch. There's a lot to play with. I do have one huge overall theory, though, about Rutger Hauer and Charles Dutton's character. Those two definitely fuck each other, right? Like, there's no question about that in this movie. I mean, not to be crass about it, but they're lovers, right? They are very close.
Maybe
they're very close with one another.
But also, like, once you've hunted your fellow man together, I guess I don't know. I think that is
once you've hunted your fellow man, what's left? Feeling your fellow man, perhaps. You're experimenting. You're crossing your boundaries as a human being. You're changing your lifestyle.
Rutger Hauer sees all bodies as a wonderland, right?
True.
Maybe.
But particularly Charles Dutton's in this movie.
See, I gotta like they were soldiers in armed vibe, right?
I think that's great.
I got a thing like, they were like ex-special forces together, and they had seen too much shit, and then they just happened to find the fucking world's worst psychiatrist who's like, you know how you handle PTSD? You get more PTSD.
Someone who's just like someone like the world's worst psychiatrist, just like, you know what you should do? Play into that. Go further.
Go to the mall. Find the cutest puppy ever. Throw rockets at it until it attacks you and then break its neck.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. We'll call it manhood. We'll be reborn together. We'll slap each other's asses and we'll fucking go live.
There is a serious ass.
We'll suckle the tea to life. Yeah.
But they are exceptionally close, and I think it's lovely personally. I mean, you have two people here who've not just bonded over the fortitude of hunting their fellow man, but also clearly love each other to the point where
they're definitely
they feel very protective over another.
At the end, when Cole gets his legs blown off and is laying there.
Oh, dude, that's what I'm talking about.
And Rutger Hauer just kind of holds his arteries to kill him and doesn't just put a bullet in him. I was like, there's something more intimate about that, right?
He can't just put it's a I can't quit you moment. He's like, I can't save you, but I will extinguish your pain. Not with a bullet, but with my own. Like, I will be the man that you need. There's something very lovely there.
Yeah. Well, getting back to this point, right, about the foregone conclusionness of it.
Right.
I think what it does is just very smart in a way.
It is.
Because I like the idea of you have, and I think using Ice-T and his friend Hank, right, as these two homeless guys.
Right.
So Mason and Hank are running around, and they had this wonderful scene where they're digging a grave for Mingo. He's like, damn, why are you digging that hole so deep? And he's like, man, I hope when I'm gone, someone will dig a hole this deep, right? And, Hank is trying to be like, hey, the last thing I do before I die is I'm going to fucking get you back on your feet, get you right. And he's like, fuck that, fuck that. And there is this element of watching these homeless guys struggle, right? And then they add this Robin Hood element. That whenever Ice-T gets anything, he uses it to share amongst the community, right?
Yeah.
So there is this nature of, we love him and he suffered so fucking much that, of course, you're going to bond onto him, right?
He's the guy that is like the emotional core that you want to take through the rest of this, because something so harrowing and terrible is about to happen. You have to have a reason to glob on. And like, what you want is, the other thing too, is by putting him in this scenario and where everyone else seems to have been, and granted, like, everyone else in the eyes of these men is homeless by choice, essentially, or homeless because they're monsters or whatever. They're scum. They're wastes of society, as McGinley repeatedly calls Ice-T. Like, the difference is we know Ice-T's story, and like, you extrapolate that once you see that weirdly lit room, like very well lit room of heads that the psychiatrist keeps. You're like, oh, like, extrapolate that, and you're like, this is not only that, like, everyone has a story like this. Like, every single one of these people who is in here now isn't just a homeless person. It's someone who's not just fallen on hard times. It's somebody who's had a life, who's had to live a life. The reason they need is because they're at their end. They're at the end of their rope. Like, that to me is what I like about what Ernest Dickerson's doing in this movie. Is he's asking you never to put yourself in the position of Rutger Hauer and the hunting party. Only will you ever be able to put yourself in the position.
I don't think anyone in their right mind would do that.
You'd be surprised.
Right? But there is surprised. Well, I mean, you're not wrong, probably, sadly, today. I think one of the things, though, right, is it's watching this man still have dignity in the face of all this tragedy and homelessness, and then seeing a guy who is working at a mission come up to him, and we know, but he doesn't know. We're like, this motherfucker. When he gets to Rutger Hauer's office, again, you should know, but you don't know.
You should. Yep.
And so that makes us more mad, right? And it kind of culminates in that dinner scene where they're talking about the way they pick the pig and eat the pig, and you're like, they're fucking spilling it right to his face.
Well, Rutger
and so
Hauer does that.
It's one of the most drawn out. Yeah, like the audience knows something that this guy doesn't know, and it goes on for like 30 minutes. It feels like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really draws out. And then once we start the actual game, the movie becomes a little more paint by numbers, right? Like, it's not as engaging. What is really fun is, again, they have so many fun character decisions. So, like, I just love the idea that Ice-T's a smoker. And, like, you know, he's just running through the forest and he's like, shit, I wish I didn't smoke. And you're like, that's fucking funny. Yeah, and then he uses the cigarettes or whatever. They add all these quirks, right? So then once Ice-T's running, right, we're kind of going through these machinations. Now we're just doing we got to complete the plot movie.
Right.
But every time we stop with these guys, we get a really fucking strange encounter. And it manages to not lose me. Because when the movie starts getting to this point, right, when they're like on the ATVs, I was like, there is no fucking foreplay, right? They're not tickling it. They're not pinching it. It's just like, here we go. Like, they were on him in like
so unfair.
1 minute of film. They get on there. They're like, we'll give you plenty of time, but we have breakfast. Psych. And they're just like on him already. And I was like, what the fuck? But then, because then I got worried, right? I was like, how the fuck am I going to watch this movie for another hour when it's just like, over there, over there.
Right.
They have this cast and they fucking unleash them, and it's wonderful. The one regret I had watching it, I felt a bit cheated that it was Gary Busey that got well done, motherfucker.
It's so fucking funny that you say that, because I thought the same thing. And again, I like to read the trivia and shit. Eric Burnt, who's the guy who wrote it, actually years later said the one major regret he has is that he killed Gary Busey off too quickly, and it should have been F. Murray Abraham instead. He's like, the only screenwriting decision I really regret in that movie is that Gary Busey's character dies first.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those, you write, I write, there are things on the page
How are you
that
going to
you're
know
like,
it's Gary Busey, you know?
right, there are things on the page where you're like, that'll be good. And then I'd imagine when you see that, Sir fucking Fat Stouts or whatever he called him,
Yeah.
the dog speech in the theater, you're like, I fucked up. Like, I fucked up. Because in that moment, Gary Busey is the most interesting character that we'll see in the entire rest of the movie.
Right.
And he even comes out and he's like, oh, let's bare hand fight, right? And you're like, the fact that we could have just gotten Gary Busey butt naked, covering himself in moss and mud and like monologuing to the trees.
There's such a massive opportunity. Like, there's a whole other movie.
I don't want to be the guy that's taking shots at Rutger Hauer because he's another one of my favorite actors. But Gary Busey was the man for this mission.
But like, there's a whole other movie where there's another section of this movie that instead of just being surviving the game, what it really ends up being is all of them having to trust Ice-T to save them from Gary Busey. Like, that's...
You know what I'm saying? That's
the fucking movie right there. Like,
we're all about to be bulldog puppies. No, but I mean that is something that hurt my soul. Because even when he got thrown in the room and I'm like, oh my God, he just did a kill one-liner. I was like, no. And I was like, great, we've still got
also,
little Derek and
I
whoever.
thought wood just burnt. I didn't know it sizzled people, but again, like, you learn a lot.
Hey, man, he had chemicals from the head jars and who knows what. Who knows what was in those fucking explosives. Yeah,
so good.
I love that. But, I mean, even a character as useless as Derek the son, right?
Yeah.
He has that one great scene where he sees Ice-T and what doesn't say anything, but then his eyes betray him. I'm like, all right, even the guy who's essentially a prop, he is the I have morals, kind of. And then later in the movie, he's like, I'll help you kill this one guy,
he's
but
still
then
there.
You better double my trust fund, Poppy.
Yeah.
And, whatever. But then you go off, right? And so Cowboy gets his moment. I would say Cole doesn't really get a great moment in the film. That was another one. Because the scene when Derek fucking bites it. One, just the fact I'm just watching a movie where a guy cuts down a tree to make a bridge with a shotgun. I was like, I'm pretty much just in. Like, I'm enjoying myself a lot at that point.
In. Yeah.
Yeah, and then his great plan is I use all my shells to saw down that tree. I'm just going to huck rocks at him. And Derek's like, ah! I caught off guard.
Pa,
I thought that
me.
was great.
Help me,
He was
Pa.
finally, you know why Derek fell to his death, though? Because his fucking massive entitled nuts just dropped. Because right before that, his dad's like, let me help you, Derek. And he's like, fuck you. And he crawls out of luck. If he would have been like Derek
his white
from 20
privilege was
minutes
really
ago.
weighing him down, and then there it was.
He was starting to like a little bit overcompensate. Like, I'm going to get some more dad's money.
Yeah.
And when he was holding on to that tree, he's like, no, my massive fucking trust fund entitled nuts. They pulled him down to his death.
You know what's interesting, too? Like, again, that scene punctuates also, like, I also think, like, come on, guys. There is that moment, and I don't mind it because, yeah, you're in. Who cares? But there is the line right after he falls, and, like, F. Murray Abraham's doing his best to act his way out of the scene. And Rutger's like, let's go get the man responsible. I'm like, ugh, did that line need to be said? We obviously know what's going to happen next. Like, there's that kind of like 90s screenwriting stuff that happens in this movie that is not like horrible because you're already in, but you're just like, all right, well, I'm in the 90s again. That's great. Sure.
Well, this is the thing where instead of a tight, thrilling scene, right? Because when they start the chase, you're like, there's a lot of like people running scenes, and you're kind of feeling the energy. And that energy comes to a screeching halt the moment he runs away from that burning cabin. So what they do is they said, everyone gets it now. Just fucking chew it up, man. Chew the scenery. And I think that's a good choice, right? Like there's that, all right, we have a fight in the middle of the night.
Right.
And it just kind of plays out. It's super fun, right? He's losing his mind. I'm not scared. They fight to the death, whatever.
Okay.
Why does Rutger Hauer not take the shot, but instead he drives back? Then why does Rutger Hauer blow up a plane, not check for a corpse, and then drives another plane away? And we'll get to the very last scene. So you're like, now we just have like these weird like things that don't make sense because we got to finish the movie.
We're just like,
but what
finishing
they
the movie.
don't do is lose our attention, right? Because there is that scene when they're sitting there talking as hunters, and he's like, I've lost my son. F. Murray's like, I've had a fucking enough. And he's like, why don't you be a hunter? Be quiet. And he's like, we'll settle up after. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, this isn't helping at all, but yeah, right? Like, I just thought it was fucking cool, man. And I think that's the thing, is that they understood exactly what they had. And an example of that is they do this really long stop in the cave. Like the fact that he has no kind of awareness that sitting in the really bright of a cave is bad, or uses the cave to maybe try to flee or hide, whatever. But they actually do the scene where, all right, we gotta like lay out the backstory and shit. And it was really effective, man. It was just kind of a nice beat.
And it's with the character. It's with McGinley's character, who's also dealing with a huge loss. And there is this like sort of, I liked that a lot. It does, yeah.
It's a really good scene, even though it completely
whole movie to a screeching halt. But
like other movies, this would be the cement shoes that killed my attention. Mm-hmm. This is a wonderful scene in my mind.
You know why too? And again, I really think it's because like Ice-T's doing Ice-T. Like there's like no one can do what he's doing in that moment. But McGinley is putting in like amazing work. Like just little stuff like the bug flying in his ear and he's just like trying to get it out. And then I think John McGinley is one of those super underrated character actors that just does not. He has morphed over time and just never gets enough credit for what he puts into these roles.
In this scene, right, Ice-T is doing the Ringo bit, right? Steady, proficient, I am the Rock, to where he can then play around, right? Because you do watch it, and there's some two shots where you're like, this is a tale of two acting theories, right?
Yeah.
Is it more important to just be a natural yourself, or are you really trying to get into it and do extra? I'll say, though, this is the scene that McGinley stopped being a cartoon man and found something. And so then his death in the next scene, when he's like, I'm fucking out, and Rutger Hauer blows him away, or Cole actually shoots him.
Cole does, yeah.
Though death actually had weight in the movie, where I shouldn't have any weight with any of the deaths. That's the one that I was like, okay.
You shouldn't have any weight with any of the deaths of these hunters. Like, I think that's like...
I'm not saying I felt bad for them, but for a half a moment, he was an understandable human being.
Totally,
I think you could argue by the end of the film, right, that Rutger Hauer's theory on, well, I was rich and went to third world countries, and you'd be surprised how cheap life is. That thesis doesn't make for a wildly interesting character, except for, he's a good bad guy, and Rutger Hauer's awesome.
It makes for a wildly compelling
has
antagonist
an actual
that you root against.
Fucking moment. Like an actual existential crisis, and faces it down, right? And he fucking dies, and I don't feel bad, because again, he might have killed those other 30 guys in the fucking head hut. But for a moment, he's more interesting than you would imagine in that movie. And that's what this movie does really well. And then we end on this strange, baffling Batman Returns ending.
Can we... Okay, you and I discussed this before we started rolling.
Yeah.
What is the costume Rutger Hauer is dressed as?
It's funny, because this was where I thought that the Cole and Rutger Hauer scenes were coming together.
Cole and Burns is Rutger Hauer.
Yeah, Burns. That they were now soldiers, right? Because they had all these uniforms with all this decoration and passports. Right. But then he comes out as a priest.
Is it a priest?
I thought it was like a Russian Orthodox priest kind of thing.
Okay.
Which doesn't make sense with how he's talking and whatever.
I thought it was more offensive than that. But let's say it's a Russian priest.
It very well could be. I don't know for sure.
Let's just go with Russian priest for the sake of
it was a choice, right? Also, that scene has one of my favorite little things when you hear a beep. It's like, hey, I'm looking for my husband and kid. And I was like, if you were in the We Go Hunt and Kill People Club, which seems to be something that's fairly exclusive. They're not bringing a new person every fucking year, right?
Yeah, no.
Maybe don't have a fucking voicemail and an LLC for that.
Yeah.
I feel like you'd be better at laundering
I'm not
said
sure
money.
paying taxes yearly on that is a great idea. I'm going to just throw that out there. I don't think a human hunting club is something you should be paying taxes on yearly.
I mean, occasionally we also do some hot air balloon trips over vineyards. It's not all bad, guys. Come on. That's a 1090 what? Yeah.
It's bullet train stuff. We do a Napa trip, human
sliding
hunting.
it in.
It's all just sort of the thing.
Hunt some less than.
Sorry,
Wait,
what was the
that
last thing
part?
you said? Napa trip? Yeah.
Oh, White Rapids? Oh, God. This time of year.
Water rafting. Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
yes.
geez. Have you ever ziplined? Whites love ziplining.
Oh, God.
We just fucking strap your bulbous bodies in and then fucking throw you down a hill.
Throw you down a hill.
I mean, it's not super fast, so it's dangerous.
Ziplining,
It's just
Napa, whitewater rafting, human hunting.
Have you ever like meandered around like a park with trees in it and been like, if only I was like 20 feet higher? We can do that for you, and we'll kill less ants. Wait, I keep hearing a thing. I don't.
Do you like hiking? We love doing hikes down the Grand Canyon. It's great. Not everyone comes back, but it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What? What was the last part?
Yeah.
It's you keep saying stuff, and I feel like you're just glossing over. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
And if you're the 5th customer, you get to take home the pig's head. It's great. No, but yeah, so he goes out in an alley, right? His car doesn't work because Mason's a mechanic. And I just love when he's walking and he tells the old lady to fuck off. She tells him to fuck off. And then you just hear,
Perfect.
Ha, 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 Burns.
Burns.
And I was like, oh, the tables have turned. The hunter hunted. It was great. And you knew this is where I was like, he probably was not special forces because he was not a great fighter. The bear, I need to get this out. The bear hug is the world's worst fighting maneuver. No one's ever won a fight from a bear hug unless you're like world's strongest man, Brian Shaw or something.
Well, unless you're like the Mountain, I've not seen a bear hug ever work.
The thing you do if you're bear hugging someone, what you're doing is putting their knee directly where your fucking nuts are and saying, please God, or hey, my arms are occupied. Why not fucking punch my eyeballs out, right? It's the worst fighting maneuver. But again, we're not fighting now. We're making a point. But, we knew it was going to end in Chekhov's blocked barrel, right? Like, it just kind of all congealed in a nice way. I did tell you this. This was my favorite choice in the film by far.
Chekhov's blocked barrel. Well done.
Is Ice-T's walking away, and Rutger Hauer's like, lucky me. And he gets his bullet. And he goes, Mason. And he's, you know exactly what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
It's such a dark shot. I don't know what's blocking the barrel, but you know what's going to happen. The camera kind of like cranes up. And as he takes the shot, we hear the sound. And it is like that thing when LeBron James gets all the powder on his hand and throws it up in the air. That happens on camera. There's like a poof, poof. And he just goes, motherfucker, check the barrel. And just walks off to the credits.
End of movie.
And I was like, yes, fuck yes. There's no like extra 10 minutes of like 5 years later, I've got all my shit together. They knew exactly the movie that they could give us and the best way to give it to us.
That. I loved that.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. In a movie that should at every turn lose your attention, right? Mm-hmm. There's no grappling with who's right or wrong. There's no drawing out the mystery. This is we are going to play with our food movie. And those usually bore the fuck out of me. Mm-hmm. Especially because this isn't like we're going to play with our food and it's like something people like me only read about. First, you have to like strip naked and walk inside of a bubble. And then they fucking clamp glow sticks to your chode. And you have to eat upside down, and it's $500 for a fucking endangered snail. Like those kind of restaurants, right? Those kind of movies love to play with their food because they think that we need to know how good they are at that shit, right?
Right.
This is literally that KFC pig bowl. Like, we know what you want, come get it. They just slop it all together and fuck around. And this movie wastes a lot of time, you would think. But I look back on it, and I honestly don't feel like it was ever wasted. I was just enjoying the fuck out of it.
No, I mean, look, it's 96 minutes. It's tight. I enjoy it. Like, yeah, it makes these choices at the end where you're like, got it. Like, we got to get to the end of this movie. Fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But
the last
who even
10
cares?
minutes are not razor lharp. We can agree on that.
But
listen, are they fucking fun?
If you're going to end a movie with a butter knife doll,
yeah,
LeBron James poof, hey.
Also, I love the one
judged?
shot when, however they filmed Rutger Hauer in that tree blowing up the plane, and he goes, "Forgive me, Father." I was like, why does he have the replicant eyes from Blade Runner? Like, however they shot his eyes, he had like mad red eye, and I was like, oh my god, he's a replicant already.
He's probably he's Roy, or he is still grieving the loss of his lover.
That would explain why Rutger Hauer. There was this scene, as my friend put it to me earlier today, and a colleague goes, "Hey, I don't want to be the leper offering you skincare advice." But when Rutger Hauer insulted Ice-T's visual cardiovascular fitness, I was like, sir,
come on.
Yeah. Don't go to the top of the hill above your glass house and roll the fucking Indiana Jones boulder, sir. How dare you? Just because you got a tight patail for fucking aerodynamics. Anyways, this movie's just fucking wildly fun. Very much like Ricochet, right? They're both movies, and that's why I think Jason picked a really cool double feature. They're both movies that are completely over-traveled grounds for story, right?
Right.
But they both continually make such strange choices that the mundane becomes a chance to see something more interesting than a movie like this ever deserved to have.
Agreed.
And that's the magic of this double feature, man.
Does the work, man.
Yeah, just fucking strange, but awesomely exciting movies. Thank you again, Jason, patron Jason.
Good pick, man.
For this double feature.
Great
fucking
picks.
Wonderful. Guys, you want to be like Jason and join the Patreon. That is patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Get in, guys. We appreciate the support. We need your help, and this is the best way to take some ownership over this fucking pod, man. Help make it the show that you want and deserve. Again, as little as $1 a month, and we assure you every single dollar helps and is appreciated. We have an amazing amount of patron exclusives coming. Really fun new stuff we're working on over there. Hopefully coming out by summer, we'll have some really new, cool, exciting stuff over there. So again, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. If you haven't gone back and downloaded Ricochet and listened to that, please do yourself a favor and watch Ricochet and join us for a talk on that. The email is filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. The YouTube is Film Alchemist. We're on all the socials you're on. Please take a second, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Guys, this is how we open the month on a double feature. But this month, the curation, the pod digs Del Toro, an entire month of Del Toro flicks, man. We've got your Chronos. We've got your Crimson Peak. We've got your Pan's Labyrinth. The patrons right now are voting on another one, maybe even Nightmare Alley, schedule permitting. So, guys, we've got a lot of awesome stuff coming up. So thank you for joining us today. Get in deeper with us, guys. And we'll see you as we dig Del Toro. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.